All right, let's dive into a case that is just wild. We're talking about a secret affair, anonymous death threats, and a bitter family fight that all lands smack dab in Judge Judy's courtroom. And what's at the heart of it all? A little dispute over just $750. So let's break down how a simple money problem spiraled into something this insane. So at the center of this whole mess is a single mother, Miss Busse. Now, she claims that all of her chaotic choices were made just to protect her son from danger. But as Judge Judy starts to pull back the layers, a very different picture starts to emerge. And that's the big question here, right? Is she a victim of some really bad circumstances, or is she just trying to dodge responsibility for her own actions? Let's find out. So on the surface, this whole thing kicks off with a pretty simple lawsuit over what seems like a small amount of money. But as we're about to see, this is not just about the cash. Oh no. It's about custody, it's about responsibility, and it's about a whole lot of personal drama. The magic number here is $750. Now, what does that represent? Well, it's 10 weeks of child support payments. At $75 a week that were automatically taken out and paid to the mom after her son wasn't even living with her anymore. Okay, so let's meet the main players in this showdown. On one side, you've got the plaintiff, Mr. McGlynn. He's the dad, and he's suing to get that overpaid child support back. And on the other side, we have the defendant, Miss Busse. She's the mother, and even though their son doesn't live with her, she thinks she should get to keep the money anyway. To really get why this all ended up in court, we gotta rewind a bit. Because that $750, it is just the tiny tip of a massive iceberg of some very complicated and, frankly, messy life events. Let's start unraveling the backstory that got them here. And this is where things just go off the rails. Fast. So for a year and a half, Miss Busse and her 12-year-old son, Austin, were living with a married couple. But then, she gets pregnant by the husband of that couple. Yeah, once that affair comes out, things get dangerous. She starts getting anonymous death threats sent to her email. Terrified, she packs up and flees to another city with a new boyfriend. And just to be clear, this new guy was not the father of the baby she was carrying. And you know who's stuck right in the middle of all this grown-up chaos? Her 12-year-old son, Austin. His mother's choices totally blew up his world, forcing him into a really, really tough spot. I mean, just try to imagine what this kid went through. At first, his mom tried to keep him in his school by driving him back and forth between cities every day. But as she got more scared, she started sending him to stay with different friends and relatives, just shuffling him from one place to the next. The instability is just off the charts. Eventually, he finally found a stable home by moving in full-time with his biological dad, Mr. McGlynn. All right, so now we're in the courtroom, and this is where it all boils over. With this incredibly complicated backstory out in the open, Judge Judy has to sift through all the emotion and all the excuses to get to the actual facts. And as you can guess, it gets intense. So when she's in front of Judge Judy, Ms. Busse gets really emotional. Her whole defense is built on this idea that she was just a mother, acting out of fear, trying to shield her son from the threats and the dangerous situation she'd found herself in. Yeah, Judge Judy is not buying it, not for a second. She looks at the whole picture, living with a married couple, getting pregnant by the husband, then immediately moving in with some new boyfriend. Her response is classic Judy, blunt, direct, and it cuts right through the whole sob story. And the tension just completely boils over when Miss Busse's new boyfriend starts shouting from the audience. Judge Judy doesn't even blink. If you're gonna shout, you're gonna leave, she says, and has them kicked right out. It's a perfect example of just how volatile and out of control this whole situation really was. And then, Miss Busse tries to shift the blame, arguing that her ex-boyfriend should have been the one to stop the child support payments. Well, Judge Judy just dismisses that excuse with her legendary sarcasm. She points out that government bureaucracy is slow, which is basically her way of saying the responsibility was on Miss Busse, not the system and not her ex. Okay. So, after all the shouting, all the wild stories, and all the excuses, Judge Judy is ready to lay down the law. Let's see how she settles this whole mess once and for all. And the verdict? It's swift. It's decisive. Judgment for the plaintiff for the full amount, $750. Mr. McGlynn gets all of his money back, no compromises, no meeting in the middle, just a clear, final ruling. So you might be wondering, with all that drama, what did it all come down to? Well, it's actually incredibly simple. Judge Judy's decision had nothing to do with the affair or the death threats. It came down to a very clear legal rule. Child support is for the child. It's paid to the parent the child lives with full-time. The second Austin moved in permanently with his father, Miss Boussy was no longer legally entitled to that money. End of story. So what can we take away from this absolute roller coaster of a case? Well, first, adult chaos creates childhood instability. The impact on kids is real and it's immediate. Second, being afraid can be an explanation for your actions, but it's very rarely a legal excuse for avoiding your responsibilities. And finally, in Judge Judy's courtroom, a simple fact will always beat a complicated, emotional story. You know, this case really makes you think about that line between personal responsibility and just being dealt a really bad hand. So I'll leave you with this question. Considering everything Miss Boussy was going through, all the fear and the chaos, was Judge Judy's black and white ruling a little too harsh, or was it absolutely spot on?